Target length, 3,500 to 4,000 words. This is the true story of a little girl who learned to play the drums because it was the one place she felt safe, who discovered she had a voice that could make strangers cry, but never heard the words she needed most from the one person whose approval she craved above all else, and who spent her whole life trying to be good enough for a mother who loved her, but could never quite say it out loud. I want to take you back before the fame, before the gold records, before the world knew her name, back to a quiet house in Downey, California, where a shy teenage girl sat behind a drum kit in the garage and felt, for the first time in her life, like she was exactly where she belonged. Many of you grew up in families like this. Families where love was assumed, but rarely spoken. Where praise came with conditions. Where one child shined and the other learned to stay quiet. If that sounds familiar, then you already understand the beginning of Karen Carpenter's story, The Carpenter Household. Harold and Agnes Carpenter were not cruel people. They were not monsters. They were a white, middle-class couple who wanted what most parents wanted in the 1950s and 60s. Stability, respectability, success for their children. Harold was a quiet man, a printer by trade, steady and hard-working but emotionally distant in the way many men of that generation were taught to be. He provided. He showed up. But he did not intervene, did not raise his voice, did not step between his wife and his children when things got tense. Agnes was the force in the house. She was organized, proper, concerned with appearances and what the neighbors thought. She had rules, she had expectations, and she had a clear favorite. Richard, 3.5 years older than Karen, was the golden child. He was serious, focused, musically gifted from an early age. He took piano lessons. He studied music theory. He practiced for hours without being told. Agnes saw in him everything she valued: discipline, talent, ambition. Karen was different. She was loud. She was energetic. She liked to play softball with the neighborhood kids, run around outside, get dirty. She did not fit the mold of what a nice, proper girl was supposed to be in the early 1960s. Agnes did not know what to do with her. Years later, people who knew the family would describe Agnes as controlling, cold, unable to show affection to Karen in the way a daughter needs. Some would say she dismissed Karen's drumming as banging pots and pans in the kitchen, as if it were just noise, not music. But here is the complicated truth. Agnes probably loved Karen. She just did not know how to show it. And Karen, sensitive and perceptive even as a child, felt that distance every single day. The move to Downey. In 1963, when Karen was 13, the family moved from New Haven, Connecticut to Downey, California, a working-class suburb of Los Angeles with palm-lined streets, ranch-style homes, and the kind of optimism that California seemed to promise in those days. The move was not for Karen. It was for Richard. Harold had been offered a job by a former business associate, and Agnes wanted Richard to have better opportunities to pursue his music career. The whole family uprooted their lives so that Richard could study composition and arranging at California State University, Long Beach. Karen was 14 when she started at Downey High School, a year younger than most of her classmates. She was shy around people she did not know. She did not have a lot of close friends at first. She joined the school marching band, not because she loved marching, but because it got her out of gym class. That is where she met Frankie Chavez, a boy who had been playing drums since he was 3 years old. He showed her the basics. He talked to her about rhythm, about feel, about how the drums were not just about keeping time. They were about holding the whole band together. Karen was hooked. She wanted a Ludwig drum set, the same kind used by her heroes Joe Morello and Ringo Starr. It was expensive, $300, the equivalent of $3,000 today. But Frankie convinced her parents to buy it for her. And when they did, something inside Karen came alive. She practiced every single day. She taught herself complicated lines. She studied stick control, grips, technique. Within a year, she could play in complex time signatures like the 5/4 rhythm in Dave Brubeck's Take 5. Her teacher, Bill Douglas, a respected jazz drummer who had played with Benny Goodman and Art Tatum, said she was a natural. Richard, who rarely gave compliments, admitted years later that he was impressed, saying she maneuvered the sticks as if she had been born in a drum factory. But Agnes? She did not see it. To her, it was just noise, just Karen being loud again, taking up space, making a mess. The first performances. In 1965, when Karen was 15, she and Richard performed together for the first time in a local production of Guys and Dolls. Karen played drums, Richard played piano, and for the first time, people outside the family started to notice something special. Karen formed her first band that same year, an all-girl trio called 2+2, made up of friends from Downey High. They practiced, they dreamed, they booked their first gig, and then one of the mothers refused to let her daughter go, and the band fell apart. It did not matter. Karen and Richard were already moving on to something bigger. They formed the Dick Carpenter Trio with Richard's college friend Wes Jacobs, a bassist and tuba player. They rehearsed every day in the Carpenter family garage. They played jazz in local nightclubs. Karen did not sing at first. She just played drums, anchoring the rhythm while a guest vocalist handled the melodies. The trio signed a contract with RCA Records and recorded 2 instrumentals. They were never released, but something important happened during those early performances. Karen discovered that when she sat behind the drum kit, she felt safe. She felt powerful. She felt like she mattered. The drums were hers. Nobody could take that away from her. Nobody could tell her she was doing it wrong. Behind the kit, she was in control. The voice nobody expected. In April 1966, when Karen was 16, the trio was invited to audition with bassist Joe Osborne, a member of the legendary Wrecking Crew studio musicians. Karen was only supposed to play drums, but at some point during the session, someone asked her to sing. She opened her mouth, and everyone in the room stopped what they were doing. Her voice was warm, rich, impossibly mature for a 16-year-old girl. It had depth. It had feeling. It sounded like it belonged to someone twice her age. Joe Osborne signed her to a recording contract on the spot. Not the trio, just Karen. He was not particularly interested in Richard's involvement. This should have been Karen's moment. This should have been the moment her mother looked at her and said, "I see you. I'm proud of you. You are enough." But that is not what happened. Instead, Agnes continued to focus on Richard. Richard was the real talent, she insisted. Richard was the composer, the arranger, the musical genius. Karen was just along for the ride. A pretty voice, sure, but Richard was the one who made it all work. Even as Karen's star began to rise, even as producers and musicians told her she had something rare and special, her mother could not see it, or would not. Early seeds of insecurity. Here is where the story gets darker, and where we have to tread carefully, because we are talking about a young girl who is no longer here to tell her own side. According to people who knew the family, and according to accounts documented in biographies and interviews over the years, Agnes began making comments about Karen's appearance early on. Comments about her weight, comments about how she looked on stage, comments about how she should dress, how she should stand, how she should present herself. Karen was not overweight. She was a normal, healthy teenage girl with an athletic build from years of playing sports and sitting behind a drum kit. But Agnes saw flaws, and she made sure Karen knew about them. Some family members and friends have said that Agnes favored Richard so openly that it became painful to watch. She praised him constantly. She doted on him. She made it clear that he was special, that he was the one with the real future. And Karen? Karen learned to be quiet. She learned to smile. She learned to work harder, to be better, to try to earn the love that seemed to come so easily for her brother. Years later, Karen's therapist, Dr. Stephen Levenkron, would try to explain to Agnes how her emotional distance and lack of affection directly contributed to Karen's need for rigid self-control, to her anorexia, to the illness that was slowly killing her. Agnes, according to those who were there, did not understand, or chose not to. There is a story, told by people who were present during one of Karen's therapy sessions, that haunts everyone who hears it. The therapist asked the family to tell Karen that they loved her. Richard did. Harold did, quietly. Agnes refused. She sat there, in front of her dying daughter, and could not say the words. Later she would say, "She already knows I love her. Why do I have to say it?" But Karen did not know. She needed to hear it, and she never did. The brother and the drums, Richard, was not a villain. He loved his sister. He admired her talent. He knew, better than anyone, that the Carpenters would not exist without her voice. But he was also controlling. He made the musical decisions. He chose the arrangements. He decided which songs they would record, which performances they would do, and, most painfully for Karen, he decided that she needed to step out from behind the drums. By the early 1970s, as the Carpenters' fame grew, Richard and the record label wanted Karen front and center, standing at the microphone, visible to the audience. It made sense from a marketing perspective. She had the voice, she had the face, she was the star. But for Karen, losing the drums felt like losing her armor. Behind the kit, she was safe. She was powerful. She was in control. standing at the front of the stage, exposed under the lights, holding a microphone instead of drumsticks. She felt vulnerable in a way she had never felt before. She did it anyway, because Richard wanted it, because the label wanted it, because that's what good girls do. They make other people happy, even when it costs them everything. Alone in her room. Imagine this. It is 1966, late at night in Downey. Karen is 16 years old. She is lying in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Downstairs, her parents are watching television. Richard is probably at the piano, working on a new arrangement. The house is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cars passing on the street outside. Karen has just been told she has a gift, that her voice is special, that she could be famous someday. But upstairs, alone in the dark, she does not feel special. She feels invisible. She feels like no matter what she does, no matter how hard she works, no matter how perfectly she sings, it will never be enough. Because the one person whose approval she craves most, the one person who is supposed to love her unconditionally, cannot seem to see her at all. She does not know it yet, but this feeling, this deep, aching need to be seen, to be valued, to be told you are enough, will follow her for the rest of her life. It will follow her onto stages in front of thousands. It will follow her into recording studios. It will follow her into her marriage, into her therapy sessions, into hospital rooms. And eventually, it will follow her into a closet in Downey on a quiet Friday morning in 1983, when her heart will finally give out from years of trying to control the one thing she thought she could. The question that remains: what happens to a sensitive child who never really hears "you are enough" from the people she needs most? What happens when a little girl learns that love is conditional, that praise must be earned, that no matter how hard she tries, someone else will always be more important? What happens when a young woman is told she is too loud, too heavy, too much, and then spends the rest of her life trying to make herself smaller, quieter, less? Karen Carpenter was not born with an eating disorder. She was not born hating her body, or fearing food, or needing control. Those things were learned. They were absorbed, bit by bit, year by year, in a household where love was assumed but never spoken, where one child was golden and the other was invisible. Her mother was not a monster. Her brother was not a villain. Her father was not cruel. They were just people, flawed, human, doing the best they could with the tools they had. But their best was not enough, and Karen paid the price. Somewhere tonight, there is a teenage girl sitting in her room, wondering why her parents do not see her, wondering why nothing she does is ever quite good enough, wondering why the praise goes to her sibling while she stays quiet in the background. If that girl is you, or if you know that girl, I hope you will tell her something Karen Carpenter never got to hear. You are enough, exactly as you are. Your worth is not measured by applause or approval or how small you can make yourself. You matter, you are loved, and you deserve to hear it out loud. Karen Carpenter had the voice of an angel, but she never heard the words she needed most. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who grew up in a family like this. Leave a comment and tell us, did you grow up feeling invisible in your own home? Do you think Karen's story would have been different if her mother had just said, "I love you" out loud? What do you wish someone had told you when you were young?